Hi, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. Usually on Friday episodes, I interview an individual activist, author, or an organization that's doing great progressive work. This episode is a little bit different. We've all been reading a lot of stories in the news about all the women who are running for office for the first time in 2018, and I'd been thinking about doing an episode about that. I suddenly realized that I knew a lot of these women. They were my friends. They were friends of friends. They were people I had gone to college with. And so I decided I wanted to hear their stories. In this episode, there are 6 segments in which I interview 7 women who are running for office for the first time, various levels of government. I tried to keep each segment short, so if you'd like to learn more about these women, you can go to our website, twobroadstalkingpolitics.com, and we have links to all of their campaign materials. I hope you'll listen through the whole thing. They have some incredible stories to tell. Hello, everybody. I am on the line right now with Sharon Fairley, who is running for Attorney General of Illinois. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited that you could join us on this episode. So, we're talking about women running for office, and I think that Attorney General of Illinois is going to be a really important position moving forward. So, I'm thrilled to see a woman running. So I thought maybe we could start if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are and what your background is.
Sure, I'd be delighted to. Well, my name is Sharon Fairley, and I'm an attorney in Chicago. I'm a mom, and I have spent the bulk of my legal career actually in the criminal justice system. But I'm a sort of a different kind of a candidate because I actually spent a fair amount of time in the business world before I became a lawyer. I actually worked in advertising and marketing, but then really decided to change my professional life after 9/11 to really dedicate my life to public service. And so I went to law school at the University of Chicago, got my law degree, and ever since then I've worked for the citizens of Illinois. I first started out as an assistant attorney general working on criminal appeals, and then I served for 8 years as a federal prosecutor for the Northern District of Illinois, which is based in Chicago. And in that job, I worked on all kinds of criminal cases, firearms and narcotics trafficking, complex fraud matters, counter-espionage, counterterrorism, a variety of cases. And then for the last couple of years before I entered the race, I worked for the city of Chicago. I first started working for the city as the first Deputy Inspector General at the Office of the Inspector General for the City of Chicago, which is the city agency that's responsible for rooting out government corruption and waste. But then after several months in that job, I was asked to take on a different role for the city, which was to take over the leadership of the agency that oversees police misconduct investigations. And that was in the wake of the controversy and really crisis here in Chicago related to the officer-involved shooting of a young man named Laquan McDonald. So I was asked to take over and reform the agency because there was grave concern over the integrity of the police accountability system, and so that's what I tried to do. And so I spent a couple of years working on police reform and police accountability issues here in Chicago.
And is this the first time that you're running for office? Have your other positions been appointed?
That's correct. I've never run for political office before. This is my first foray into this world.
Why did you decide at this moment that running for Attorney General would be the next move for you to do?
So it was really a few things, because I think if you, even just a couple of months before I entered the race, if you had asked me if I would ever run for political office, I'm sure I would have said absolutely not. But so there were a number of factors that sort of came into play. Obviously there are many women like myself who, over the last year since the Trump win of November of 2016, I've been feeling very, very sort of frustrated by not being able to play a personal role in pushing back at some of the harmful and regressive and, frankly, racist policies that are being implemented by that administration. So that sort of frustration sort of reached a fever pitch. But I also, when the current Attorney General decided that she wasn't going to run. She's a woman. It's a woman named Lisa Madigan. I really felt strongly that I wanted the office to stay in the hands of a woman because I believe that our leadership here and our political leadership here in Illinois is very male-dominated, and that I just really didn't want that office to sort of go in another direction because I really believe that she brought an independence and a diversity of thought to the leadership that was really important. And when I looked around at the folks that were stepping up to the plate to run for the office, I got concerned, and I decided that I actually had the skills and experience and independence to do it myself. And so I threw my own hat in the ring. And here I am.
And if you're elected, you would be the first African American woman to hold this role.
That's correct. Yeah. So I didn't do this to sort of make history, but it will be historic because not only would I be the first Black female Attorney General for the state of Illinois, I would only be the fourth across the nation. And I actually didn't know that statistic when I first decided to run, but I heard it afterwards, and I was actually surprised that we haven't come that far, right? That there still have been so few Black women in these roles, and of course, in today's political environment, the attorneys general play such an incredibly important role, not only in terms of protecting and working for the citizens of the state that they represent, but also just forming this really important coalition nationwide at pushing back against the federal policies that are harmful to many citizens, including, women and people of color. So it's just these jobs are really more important than ever, and it's a role that's really so important today that I just really felt strongly that we needed a person who was independent and had the experience to do the job well, and that I felt that I fit the bill.
And so I think a lot of people, when they think about opposition to the Trump administration, focus very much on Congress and don't think as much about what attorneys general do. So can you talk about some of the ways in which that office can really help protect the rights of the citizens of the states?
Sure. Well, there are a number of ways that an attorney general can actually work to protect the citizens of their state from the harmful federal policies. So some of them, people hear about. The attorneys general have across the state, the Democratic attorneys general have formed a very strong coalition that work together in a number of ways in terms of filing lawsuits, joining together to file lawsuits against the administration. So there's been a lot of work done in the area of immigration, for example, seeking to protect the Dreamers, and then also pushing back against the Trump federal immigration policy. Also protecting the environment. As we know, that the Trump administration's approach to the environment under Scott Pruitt, who's the head of the EPA, is really not fulfilling all the duties that it really needs to do to protect our clean air and our clean water on a national basis. And so the Attorney General, and particularly here in Illinois, the Attorney General has very broad powers to enforce environmental law. So that's one of the important areas where the Attorney General can step in and fill the void. Another important area is in the area of criminal justice reform. So, for example, here in Chicago, we have an issue with regard to police accountability and police reform. And prior to Trump taking office, the mayor of the city of Chicago had agreed to enter into a consent decree that would govern the reform process of the Chicago Police Department. And that consent decree would be an agreement between the mayor and the Department of Justice. But, of course, under the Trump administration, with the Department of Justice now being led by Jeff Sessions, they have decided that they aren't going to sort of get involved at all in police accountability. And so they kind of created this vacuum. And, of course, our Attorney General here in Illinois stepped into that void and sued the city and is going to create a consent decree herself between her office and the city of Chicago to make sure that there's court oversight of the reform process of the Chicago Police Department. So that's another way in which the Attorney General can kind of step into the void left by, the harmful federal policies. And then also in the area of consumer protection. Consumer protection is a large part of what an Attorney General's responsibilities are in terms of protecting consumers or the citizens of the state from exploitive practices by business. And so also we see For example, the Trump administration backing away from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, for example. And so this is an area where the Attorney General can then step in and make sure that consumers are protected from exploitive business practices when it comes to financial services, products, and services. So there are a number of ways that the Attorney General can really fill that void.
As we've noted, you're a woman and you're a mom. You have 2 adult children, is that correct?
I do. My kids are 27 and 31. I have a son and a daughter.
And so can you talk a little bit about why it's important to have mothers in these important roles, things like Attorney General, but also, other elected positions at various levels of government?
Well, I think, women and mothers, we bring a certain kind of perspective to issues and challenges that I think is just different, right? There's the idea of being empathetic and having the empathy, and just also having just a strong commitment to the issues that affect women. So for example, when it comes to standing up for women's reproductive health care rights, this is something, obviously I want to care about for myself, but I'm also worried about my daughter's future. I have a daughter, she's 27, and I worry about her future when we're in the year of 2018, and there's actually a debate going on about whether or not women should have access to contraceptives. And I just find this appalling and really feel very strongly that I wanted to have a personal role to play in just stopping some of these incredibly regressive policies from being implemented in a way that's going to harm women and children and families. And so I believe that, as a black woman, I bring a set of personal experiences to the job that I think are really important and really relevant to the work of the job. So for me personally, for example, I was born in 1960, which was in the Jim Crow era, right? So there were still, for whites only, signs over sinks, when I was born and was a young girl. And I was raised, I was a young girl in the 60s when the race riots were going on. In the 1970s, when the women's movement was getting off the ground, I was a teenager, kind of finding my voice in this world. And then in the 1980s, in the era of Reaganism, I was starting my professional life, and at a time when women were still exceedingly rare in certain professional occupations. And so because of that, I have had to work hard and persevere. And, we talk about the Me Too moments, right? So, I've been harassed, I've been marginalized, I've been underpaid, but through hard work and perseverance, I've stood up for myself. And I bring that kind of courage and tenacity to the professional work that I do, and that's the kind of courage and tenacity that I believe is necessary at this day and time for the Attorney General to be able to stand up to the political and corporate interests that try to exploit the citizens of Illinois, and that's why I really believe that I'm right for the job.
I think that's terrific. And you have a primary election coming up pretty soon in what is a very crowded primary field.
Yeah, the primary is March 20th, so we're working hard right now to get the message out about my campaign and what I stand for, and making a lot of headway, so I'm feeling very good.
What are the best ways that people can learn a little bit more about you?
Well, there's a lot of information on the campaign website, which is www.sharonfairley.com, and that's spelled SharonFairley.com. And we have all of my policy platforms on there, so if you really want to learn about what I stand for and what I would do as Attorney General, I would encourage everybody to check it out and get involved. A race of this magnitude takes a lot of resources and a lot of support. So if you feel like you share the same values that I share, I'd appreciate your getting involved and having your help and support.
Fantastic. And is there anything else that you think people would find surprising or unique about you?
Well, I'm kind of a different candidate, right? So I'm like I said, I've never run for office before. I'm not a politician. I'm just kind of a normal person, and I'm in this race because I'm not trying to further a political career. I really love being a lawyer, and I feel so honored and privileged to have kind of found my calling in the law, and really am excited about being able to serve the state in this important way, being the top lawyer for the state. So I'm excited and very hopeful about where this is going.
That's great. And we will put up on our website when we post the episode, we will put links to your website and your Facebook and Twitter as well. So I hope that people will go and learn a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you